Master of Deceit from RFA Stories.
I've just learned an immigration lawyer from Great Neck has been killed inside of his office after allegedly refusing to take a woman's case.
Now, the attorney we are talking about is 66-year-old Jim Lee. Again, he lived in Great Neck. His office was in Flushing. We have his picture up on your screen right now. According to his website, he was an immigration lawyer.
It was March 2022, and people in the pro-democracy world were in shock. A lawyer named Jim Lee, good-looking, charismatic, a Tiananmen hero, was stabbed to death in his Flushing office, a few blocks from Whong's apartment. He was known for the courage he showed in 1989 and for his work as head of the Pro-Democracy Foundation, Hujiao, where Mr. Whong was a volunteer. A student, Xiaoning Zhang, one of Jim Lee's clients, showed up one morning with a cake, 2 knives, and a Communist Party flag.
你是后不后悔杀人？你为什么杀人？你后不后悔？当然出来了。你后不后悔？最后悔的就是你们这些叛徒！你们身为中国人需要反共！你们已经害死无数学生，还要害学生！
That's Xiaoning Zhang, shouting at journalists who've asked if she regrets the knifing. No, she said, you're the ones who should regret what you've done. You're Chinese, but now you're traitors. You're against the Communist Party. The things she was saying, they were CCP slogans, propaganda from the Chinese Communist Party. Afterwards, Mr. Whong sent a message about Jim Lee's death to the Chinese Security Ministry. It was his last message to the Chinese agent. 2 days later, Mr. Whong was arrested and accused of working secretly for the Chinese government. Mr. Whong is not being accused of any wrongdoing or connection to the Jim Lee case. But the close proximity of the two events, the lawyer's death followed so soon by Mr. Whong's arrest, stirred up a storm of paranoia and speculation within the tightly knit community of US-based Chinese dissidents. They felt like, more and more, the CCP was closing in. Of the many waves of Chinese immigration to the U.S., there is a small particular specific group that makes it mark among the greater concentration of diaspora in Flushing, New York. The city has the greatest number of exiled Chinese democracy activists in the world, New York Magazine reported last year. The Flushing neighborhood in Queens is considered the de facto headquarters of the movement that might once have counted thousands but has dwindled since its heyday in the 1990s. When many came to the U.S. following the Tiananmen Square protest and massacre.
I would use the word like pro-democracy movement. So I think, starting from 89 continuously until this day, the pro-democracy movements are continuing, and then there are the people who continue to leave China and come to the U.S. and using the freedom afforded by the U.S. to organize, to continue to speak up, freedom, democracy concerning China.
Yaqiu Wang is a research director at Freedom House, a nonprofit in Washington. Yaqiu, who is not related to Mr. Wang, tells me that life can be difficult for many of the dissidents who try to restart their lives here in the U.S.
I think at the very basic level, it's the language. It's easier for the younger generation now, but I think for the people who fled China as because of the Tiananmen massacre, language barrier is still huge. Sometimes people get frustrated saying, you've been here like 30 years, why your English hasn't improved. So it's hard when you came as an adult, you learn a new language is hard. Also, then you kind of get used to be in the Chinese community. They're not, you can survive pretty well in a place like Flushing or even Rockville here in Washington, D.C. Another thing I think it's very important is that those people who became activists, who became dissidents, when they were in China, they were graduates of Beida or Tsinghua. They were, the apple. What's the English phrase? They're like precious people who are admired, and they're always good at school.
They're elites.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's the word. They're elites.
Today, the number of people who are really active in the movement is small. A core of democracy advocates. And they have meetings and organize protests. It's a tight-knit group, like a family. Ai Mei Zhang is a key figure in the movement. She was a graduate student at Yale when the Tiananmen protests happened. She was supposed to have been returning to China, but after reading about the protests in the newspaper, she decided to stay.
If you were me, what would you do? Your brother killed in Tiananmen Square, your more than dozens of colleagues put into jail. What would you do? You still like to go back to work to serve this government?
After Jim Lee's death, Ai Mei took over as head of the Hujiao Foundation and worked with Mr. Whong, who also says that the Tiananmen protest also marked a turning point for him.
这个是刚到纽约，上只有女神，这个相机不好。我来美国和64事件。
I was furious about what the Chinese government did to the students, he said. He pointed at a photo of himself standing in front of the Statue of Liberty. It's freedom he wants to pursue.
我简单介绍一下我的这些著作，这个是最早的，叫《太平洋海游传》，50万字。这个书啊。
When you're in Mr. Wong's apartment, you have no idea that you're even in America. The calligraphy thumbtacked on a wall, carved wooden furniture, a bottle of dragon seal wine on the floor next to his bed, all from China. He had his books and articles about him laid out. They showed what an important person he was there. He told a Chinese journalist he was better off there. He'd made a lot of money and had a big house and lived well as a professor.
It's not the same. It's not the same. In China, I was respected, living a pampered life. In America, it's all up to your own effort. If you want to go out and work, you can go work. If you don't want to, you don't have to. If you want to write books, you can write books. Nobody cares.
On a summer afternoon, we walked into the headquarters of the Democratic Party of China in Flushing. Juntao Wang, one of the heroes of the Tiananmen protest, is the president. Juntao, who's not related to Mr. Wang, is in his late 60s. He's wearing a baseball cap, sitting at a table with the collapsible legs, and there's 3 small stacks of dollar bills. It's a lean operation supported by members' fees, $10 a month. Today, the pro-democracy movement is struggle with momentum, fundraising, and attracting participants. But there's one group paying close attention to what they do, what they say. China's Ministry of State Security. We kept hearing stories, and turns out the movement is filled with informants, people who pass information onto the Ministry of State Security. Sometimes they do it for money, or they believe in the cause, or they're scared for their family in China. Juntao Wang, the Tiananmen hero, said, most Americans don't have a clue about this world and how complex it is. When I speak to Yaqiu Wang of Freedom House, she tells me the same thing.
Funny thing that I knew Wang Shujin was programmatic, I don't know, a few years before the FBI announcement, because the people in the community already suspected him of doing that. But they told me that, well, at least I know he is the person. I just let him stay in the group and attend a meeting because I'd rather have him than having a person that I don't know who that person is.
When I heard those statements, it also made me feel like they're a little helpless. Like, there's nothing I can do.
Exactly. Because they know that the government is doing that, like planting informants in their community. So, And, I'd rather know who that person is than not knowing who that person is. But it absolutely creates a environment that people are suspicious of each other. It's really unhealthy. I think people are worried, is the car behind me, following me, things like that. And also people become really suspicious of each other within the Chinese community. I think that's really, really bad, has a very, insidious effects on the community because people suspect, are you the spy? Are you the spy? So, that's actually, the intention of the Chinese government, trying to sow doubt within the communities, trying to sow suspicion within the community.
In just a few months, the Tiananmen generation and their world inflation had been shattered. Jim Lee, the head of the foundation, was dead. They were trying to get money from whatever they could to support their cause, and one of their longest-serving members, Mr. Whong, was facing his espionage trial. It was a failure so spectacular, surely it was designed, whether by the Chinese intelligence ministry or anybody else. Who would have come up with this plot? You couldn't have put it in a movie. Nobody believed it. Here's Juntao Wang.
It's hard for you to understand. That line of work is very dark. Just before his death, Jim Lee told another friend of mine, "It's too dark. This kind of investigation and counter-investigation will make your head explode." As for Jim Lee, I can only say there are no answers. There will never be any answers. If Wang Shujun is a Chinese spy, you will never know because he will have hidden it well. If he's not, you wouldn't know either.
I ran into Mr. Whong in the courthouse in the summer of 2024. He was lost, wandering in a hallway, looking for the room where he was supposed to be. We spoke briefly, and I gave him back a packet of pictures he had loaned me, photos of him as an academic in China. A moment later, he sat in the courtroom, an accused man. The place was quiet. He looked down at the pictures, flipping through them with a halfway smile, seeing what his life had once been.
Next time on Master of Deceit, the trial of Wang Shujun begins. What will happen as we go inside the courtroom?
Hungry for more RFA podcasts?
Want to hear interviews and analyses with RFA journalists and find out how RFA stories are born?
Do you want to explore the sillier side of RFA's content with bad puns, memes, and mindless banter?
Mindless? If you said yes, then check out the RFA Insider podcast.
Visit rfa.org/English/insider or find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts.
So yeah, check it out.